And a good afternoon to you. Today is February 19th, and you are watching Cards Hub 365 here on Sports Hub STL. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne of the Cardinal Radio Network and our Cardinal insider, Brenden Schaeffer, here with you for the next 30, 45 minutes or so. We'll see how long we go today. Talking Cardinal baseball from a Wednesday here as we are coming to you from Jupiter, Florida. Later on in the show, Claibs, you had a sit down earlier today with Michael Siani. We will play that for the folks as he battles out Victor Scott for that, and maybe Lars Newpar for that center field position.
It's a three-man race, I think, for that position. And Siani really accounted for himself well last year. Maybe when you look at the three of them, probably the most polished center fielder of the three, and a guy that certainly would warrant a spot on this ball club because not only can he play the outfield well, but he's a very good base runner and maybe the best bunter on the team.
Great hands, too. We saw that when he almost dropped the microphone. And
if he only knew how expensive that microphone was, he would have used two hands.
Pretty good.
But he got it with the glove hand too. Reached out there, Bob grabbed it with the glove hand.
And my thing was, a good receiver doesn't care about glove hand. He just makes the catch.
Yeah. Michael Siani, interesting the way that he kind of made his way into an offensive player that the Cardinals could afford to have in the lineup really last year. With how good he is in center field defensively, it's a manager's dream to have a guy like Michael Siani out there, and a dream for a pitching staff too. But toward the middle to latter portion of the season, what he started to do, taking the at-bats that he took at the plate, I think really opened the Cardinals' eyes to, like, this guy could potentially be that everyday guy to help out our pitching staff, but also he's not just an auto out at the bottom of the lineup. He's a guy that can actually take some really good ABs, and we saw that last year.
Yeah, he wasn't an automatic out in the latter part of the season, and I really felt that had the injury not come up, he would have been in the conversation for a Gold Glove. I thought he played that well. His metrics would have certainly giving him credibility. So, but the injury, and what did he have, a lat? I think it was a lat.
I think that might have been what it was.
It was something that it takes time to heal.
Just long enough to keep him out of that conversation, probably from an innings perspective.
Your comments throughout the entire show are welcomed in the YouTube chat, or just chat and argue amongst yourselves as we bring up random topics throughout the program today. But we'd like you to get involved and hit that like and subscribe button as well, so you can see every time that we go live here on Sports Hub STL, whether it's Brooke and Randy in the mornings or a night like tonight where we have the Mizzou postgame show. And Brenden, you're going to be playing double duty on that today. You and Kareem Rush will be on tonight after Mizzou plays Alabama, fourth-ranked Alabama tonight in Columbia. So all kinds of coverage today here on Sports Hub STL. Claibs, yesterday we talked about we discussed how, at this point in camp, you're kind of looking for stories. Games haven't started yet. Everybody's itching for that. But I've heard you talk to multiple people today. One of the things that you've been big on is the bullpen for this year's team. And that's one of I think of all of the things that we look at with the Cardinals this season going into it and all of the question marks that there are, bullpen is something that has not been talked about at all, where last year that really was their strong point.
It was a difference maker for the Cardinals last year. And, when you look at the big picture of what this team looks like, you're going to need somewhere between 18 and 19 pitchers overall, between starters and also guys in the bullpen. And, Brenden, you and I were kind of looking at who has options left. But I thought the guys that I saw last year with their first, tour of duty with the Cardinals, really accounted for themselves well enough to say, man, if we can get that and a little bit more for this year, man, if you can get to the seventh inning, the Cardinals could be really lights out because they have guys from both sides and more than one guy. I mean, you have multiple lefties you can use, you have multiple righties you can use, so you don't have to use the same guy over and over. Last year, that guy who we used over and over was Kittredge. And he gave you a lot for a guy who just come off of Tommy John. This year, I think there's more balance, not only on how we break camp, but the ones who go to Memphis who will be on that shuttle for sure.
I actually think that's a really good point because and even guys like Matthew Liberatore, who he's going to be a starter at this point in camp because that's always the way they like to do it. They always say you can toggle it back.
They tell everybody to stretch out.
Stretch out.
I think they have. Didn't they talk to you about coming.
They wanted you to go. They wanted you to throw 2 innings on Sunday.
They did say they have enough lefties already in the rotation,
Okay.
so I just missed that cut, unfortunately. Right. But Matthew Liberatore's in that camp. Zach Thompson threw 2 innings today on the backfield. Like those guys are still going to be stretched out. But then you start to think about we get closer to the start of the season. I think with what we saw from Libby last year, he's one of those lefties that could be a real factor when you get into the 7th and beyond. JoJo Romero is one of the few guys that does not have options when you talk about that bullpen. Him and Helsley are really the two that I think will be locked in. And even a guy like, as you shift thinking about the right side, Ryan Fernandez, he wasn't able to be optioned last year because of Rule 5, and he had to be with the club all year. But he's a guy that maybe they'll even get him into the shuffle, even though we do sort of view him as more of one of those back end of the bullpen type of right-handers. You've got a lot of guys that I think the Memphis shuttle Claibs is probably going to be more active than we've seen it in most years when it comes to that pen.
I would agree. So let me ask you, we know about Helsley and what he was able to do last year. Who do you see being that guy if Helsley's thrown back-to-back days and you need a win?
I think it's Fernandez.
I think it probably is too, which is why it's interesting that because there was the comment made by Mo kind of around the winter meetings when you were coming up upon the Rule 5 draft, and they said we don't necessarily anticipate drafting another reliever for that Ryan Fernandez type of mold because last year it did handcuff them in that that was one extra spot that you couldn't option. And I view that as a positive because he pitched so well.
He pitched well enough you didn't have to worry about it.
You didn't really want to worry about it to
But you take
with.
in the back of your mind, how many Rule 5 guys have you seen over the course of time where we're stuck with them?
Right.
And you try and find a way to put them out there, but then you realize this probably wasn't a good idea, especially when you get into the months of June and July and you really need another player.
Yeah, and that was not mostly the case for Fernandez. He had a little bit of a time late in the season where he kind of had a lull and then picked it back up.
Maybe a little tired. I mean, a lot of those guys had maxed out as far as innings were concerned.
Sure. But like you said, Joe, I really think as well that Ryan Fernandez is somebody that acquitted himself nicely to the extent that if he's pitching like that again, they even gave him a lot of 8th inning opportunities as the season wound down last year. So he's certainly in that conversation. I think they thought going into last year that somebody that could emerge into that role was Riley O'Brien, and obviously just didn't stay healthy. He made the opening day team. Remember, he struck out Ohtani in that first game and came up injured, so we didn't really see a lot of him. He's back in camp, another guy that will kind of have to see their way through. Roy Croft, I think, is a guy that they really like, but again, he's got options as well. So as guys get their opportunity, they'll be on the shuttle. When they're up, can any of the guys from that group, especially the right-handers, because I think you've got JoJo and even maybe Libby from the left, John King from the left side that can be in that conversation. For the right-handers, who are the guys that you're going to say, yeah, we could option him, but we don't necessarily want to because he's kind of carved out a role as our 7th or 8th inning guy?
One of the things is I'm looking at what you're about to say. We can sit here every day and there's going to be a name that we won't bring up that probably should be considered more, and we're looking here at Kyle Leahy. This is a guy who, and I think you kind of overlook him because he's a very quiet person, doesn't say a lot. I mean, he's cordial, there's no doubt about that, very professional, but you just don't really think about him until he's on the mound and he's walking off the mound and having retired the side. And there's another guy that's going to be in that mix, and we have a lot of guys like that, and not to mention we haven't even we talked about Graceffo and some people who they want to see
the young
in that
prospect
role.
type of kids. Yeah.
So it's a nice dilemma to have, and you haven't even played a game yet. And I'm not sure if I need to go out on a very far limb here and say, come July, I bet we'll be looking for some more pitching.
As Trevor asked, about Kyle Leahy and what his role is going to be. Is it going to be MLB reliever or AAA starter? Kyle Leahy today, they did have him throwing live BP against the top of the lineup. Today he was up there facing Wynn, Burleson, Gorman. I didn't see who else was. You were a lot closer.
I was watching the Jordan Walker pool,
which was I think Zach Thompson.
No,
Thompson was with.
I was watching Sonny and Mark
Sonny
Matz.
Gray, Steven Matz were on that field with Jordan Walker. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had Leahy throwing against. That was when we were leaving there. That was
that's right.
Leahy throwing against Wynn and Gorman and Burleson. I saw that. I didn't see what other numbers were over there.
I saw John King throwing against Victor Scott and his bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of these guys, they just want to get a look at what it looks like.
Sure.
Although Jordan Walker today, he was hitting some line drives today that you're saying to yourself, okay, I can see where there's been an adjustment. And
But on the other side too, I mean, as we were leaving, I mean, one of the swings that Mason Wynn took against King at the end there. I mean, that's a swing I don't think we will ever see him take in the regular season.
And it's funny we talk about that because I was talking to him recently about, he was such a good 2-strike hitter where, he didn't get himself out. He had to make them get him out. And I said, how were they pitching you, once they had a book on you? He said, well, they wanted me to chase a little bit more. He said, I was just trying to stay patient and just put it in play instead of trying to pull it. He said, if I'm going to pull something, it's going to be early in the count where I can sit on fastball. But in this situation, everybody's trying to throw him stuff away and away and away. And he was so good that he was able to go with the pitch. And I think he's going to be an interesting project to see how he adjusts, not just from a hitting approach, but just physically, the toll it took on his body. He played most of the year with a bad back.
He did. That happened back in Jupiter at the beginning of the season. I think that's partially the reason they went out and got Brandon Crawford.
They weren't sure. When you talk about a back, man, he could have easily been Christian Yelich.
Yeah.
Okay, where he gets out to a great start, and all of a sudden when the back goes out, now you're looking around like, now what? And it was a good idea to have Crawford here as an insurance policy. You didn't get the productivity you hoped for, but this is a hard business to just come off the bench cold and play 3 days a week, maybe get 5 at bats if you're lucky. Yeah. And he did the best he could. And this year, I think they went in a different direction. We think Hellman would be that guy.
We certainly think that's possible, and Fermin's going to be in that mix if they want to give him some look at shortstop. But it was interesting that Ollie Marmol was asked about Mason Wynn this morning in the context of you had the back to deal with last year, and you managed his playing time because of that.
And I think he played a lot, too.
He did, and I think he's going to play even more this year. As Ollie explained it, physically, he's in a great spot with the back, and they also know how to manage and attack it now that it's happened and they've gone through it. I think they're going to be in a great spot for that this year. So that backup role can look different than, we need somebody because we got to be braced in case he goes down. I think they're pretty confident where Mason's at.
We only saw, and I mean, it's way too early, and this is a ridiculous question to ask.
Next week.
But when you look at somebody like Mason Wynn at his age, having the year under his belt, I mean, to think a guy like that can't play 162 games. I mean, there were only a handful of guys that did it last year in baseball, but I think he seems to be one of those guys with how young he is. And
I'm going to disagree with you on that. Cal Ripken doesn't play anymore. Okay. And that whole mindset of trying to play 162 is shared by less than 10 people who play this game. They may want to, but they know they're not. The thing that Wynn has done this year, he came in weighing maybe 178. He loses 10. Now he's under 170.
Right.
This year he's coming in at like a little over 185, knowing that he's going to end up somewhere in the 178 range. But the one thing he said, when I started to lift during the season, every time I lift, I go 0 for 5 or I have an 0 for day. And then it became something up here. But now he's really, really ready to fight through that in order to maintain that edge. And I think the fact that he's gone through a whole season, seeing everything and everyone, I think his ability to make that adjustment will be to his advantage.
The schedule is unique. If you haven't looked at the actual Cardinals schedule yet this year, and you go through and you look at the calendar of it, it really seems like, I don't know if it's an MLB thing or if the Cardinals just got lucky, but you look at how it's kind of situated. I mean, it's a lot of Thursdays off. It's a lot of Wednesday afternoon games. It's a lot of Thursday completely off, to where you can get into a really good routine as a player, knowing that you will have the same day every week off, and you're not doing these 4-game series or 2-game series or whatever the random whatever last year was of having a Friday off or a Sunday off and those those ridiculous things. There are a lot of Thursday off days this year.
There's a plus and a con of that. It's nice to have a Thursday when you're at home. But if you're on the road, if you're leaving after that day game, because, now you're traveling that day. And that if you're going to the West Coast or something like that, I mean, the travel element comes into play. We don't see it because we're not playing, but trust me, it does have an impact. But I've been an advocate, and you and I've shared this. Major League Baseball needs to figure out a legitimate schedule where everybody, with the exception of, let's say, half a dozen games, are off on Monday or Thursday. And the reason why I would use that, because that way, if we have to do a makeup game,
Right.
instead of sitting in a ballpark for 5 hours trying to get 2 innings in, and we've been lucky. Although last year what did we have, like 9? It was kind of crazy.
There were some last year.
And the makeup games and double headers that you had to play, that'll burn up a pitching staff. But you have 6 games for TV's sake, so the networks can pick and choose if they need to throw a game up there on the West Coast or whatever. They can do that, but everybody else should be off. And that way, if you do have to travel and make up that day, you're going to be off the next week. And that way, you can really set up your pitching a lot more effectively compared to having these goofy start times. Now, I was told that with the next TV situation, they're thinking about going universal. Everybody starting at the same time, whether it's in the Central Zone or the East Zone or the West Coast, which will start later. But it would be no 7:05 compared to 6:40 or 6:45 compared to 7:15. So they will all be universal, where if the MLB network wants to do a look in, the games are all end around the same time, and then you go to the West Coast games. That's something that's been discussed, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that once they figure out this whole TV mishmash that's going on now, whether it's local or the national contract. And they're looking for uniformity. And you know what? Look no further than the NFL.
Right.
Look no further. You know when those games are going to start. They're going to start at 12:05. They're going to start at either 3:15 or was it
3:25?
3:25, yeah. And then you had your night games that were going to always start at 7 o'clock. And that works. It works. And I think the tradition that we've had at baseball, we've always had a 1:15 businessman's. But look, man, let's get on the same page here.
Speaking of TV, that was announced earlier today, FanDuel Sports Network has announced starting today live local premium sports content available for an add-on subscription through Prime Video. The offering, $19.99 per month. I'm
a radio guy, so I wouldn't know much about that. I wish him best.
So you watch it on TV and you turn it on to the radio to listen to you, Rick, and John.
So here's how that works, because I think when I am not on the road, I go between John and Ricky, and I listen to Chip and Brad as well. I think we're very, very blessed to have so many versatile guys that can do things. And
I'll listen to Polo and Benji too.
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't know what they're saying, but
you know what? Hey,
it sounds like a pretty good game.
I will watch it. I will listen to them call an inning, and then I will go back and I will look at what happened. And I will
how
guess.
You learn Spanish.
Then I will guess. I'll be like, okay, this is what I think happened for those 4 batters. And I tell you what, I get it right more often than not.
You know what? From an educational standpoint, I think that's a great way for a parent to teach their kid 2 things: teach them the game and teach them another language along the way.
It's pretty good.
I mean, it'd be a nice little summer project.
Yeah.
And my Spanish is, I know how to ask for certain things in Spanish.
The important things.
My baseball jargon isn't where it needs to be, although I kind of have a pretty good idea of what's being said. But I think that'd be a fun project. In that way, listen, not to get on the soapbox of education here, but this would be a neat thing from a bonding standpoint and also a cultural standpoint, because one of the things we in this country take for granted, when people come from other countries and learn this culture, learn a language, and learn all the other things, we take it for granted.
Right.
Because we know if they let you out in the central square of one of these cities and ask you to get to the restroom, you'd be lost.
Right.
Let alone anything else. But I think we sometimes take that for granted. The difference between salt and pepper or a cold one or would you like to. Or
Google Translate's a beautiful thing.
The cold one.
But think about the ones that never had Google
I
Translate. And I think it's something that we need to be more understanding and engaging about, learning that people who come from other countries want to try and embrace this culture, and we should be willing to help them with that.
And you have the MLB too. I believe you could watch the game and switch the audio over if you have it on MLB.
On the MLB app.
The MLB app. I think you can.
And if all else fails, there's a Cardinal radio network.
That's what I'm saying. You can listen to the radio feed while you're watching on the MLB.
Well, Ricky dropped some Spanish in on you.
He will.
Time,
yeah.
So that works.
Ray said the MLB version of Red Zone, which I think even on the MLB network they've got something kind of similar to that, but not the exact same.
Hey, just want to let you know again, I mentioned earlier tonight, the Mizzou Hub post-game show.
Oh, boy.
A big part of what we're doing here at Sports Hub STL is reacting together when good or bad things happen to our teams. To that end, we will be live after every game that one of our teams plays, and it starts tonight with Mizzou Hub post-game with Brenden Schaeffer and former Mizzou star Kareem Rush. Brenden and Kareem will be breaking down the Tigers game with Alabama, and you can participate in the discussion. It'll begin shortly after the game ends. Just come to the YouTube page right after the sound of the buzzer and join Brenden and Kareem from Mizzou Hub postgame, brought to you by Hot Shots St. Louis, home of all the games all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com, and by Educated Spirits' new Rivals Bourbon Collection featuring the Black and Gold. Visit educated-spirits.com for more. And
I'm anxious to hear Kareem tonight. For those who didn't see him play, he was a really, really good player. And he was one of, Anthony Peeler put Kansas City on the map as far as basketball was concerned. And then Kareem, and then you have Alec Burke, who's still in the NBA, and there have been a few other guys. But he was an exciting player at Missouri and had a very good NBA career as well. So I'm anxious to hear his thoughts on what he sees now and maybe how much the game has changed since he left.
I just hope we're talking about a win.
this
Huge game. Huge game.
It's a big one.
But, here's the thing. In the SEC this year, nobody's home court is safe.
That's true.
You look at what Missouri has done going into Florida, going into Mississippi State, and going to some other places. And then you have Texas A&M come in and break up your furniture as well.
Sure.
It just kind of says where college basketball is all over the place. And
Kansas getting beat by 35.
You know what?
What a shame.
When Kansas
hate to see that.
When Kansas loses, there's no mistake. There's no buzzer beater. I mean, when they walk out of the gym, somebody's foot still in their rear end. I mean, they have had some going overs this year.
Yep.
And for a team that we've always put on that pedestal as being one of the gold standards of college basketball, but this year,
just hate to see it. I mean,
yeah, it's written all over your face, man. It's written all over your face.
This is Cards Hub 365, supported
right.
by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. We were talking a little bit about some of the live bullpens that were thrown today. You guys both said you went and saw Sonny Gray throw for the first time. Ollie was pressed on it in his media scrum this morning, trying to get him to announce that Sonny was going to be the opening day starter.
You gotta be kidding.
Yeah.
This early we started.
Somebody just somebody asked and said, are you planning his starts to line up with opening day? And he said, you can assume that. And then I think multiple people, Brenden, you were there. Like multiple people kind of ran after Ollie, being like, "Wait, can we say that he's the opening day starter?" And Ollie said, "Can we get through a few more days?"
Help me.
He goes, "Can we get through a few more days?" Okay. Everybody wants to be first.
We'll just take it as it comes.
Yeah, everybody wants to be first.
We'll take it as it comes.
Right now, the only opening day starters that have been announced are the Cubs and Dodgers over in Japan. So everybody wants that. They want to be first.
Can we use common sense here? I mean, you signed him last year to be your lead guy. I don't think anything's changed from that. And for somebody to roll that question out, and I'm not even going to say, well, I got to ask. No, you don't. Use common sense. People who are down here covering this, they've been around baseball long enough to figure it out. You didn't ask the question.
I did not ask that.
No, he just wanted to know about Tekoa Roby.
I asked Tekoa
Roby. He was talking about Gunnar Henderson's twin brother.
So when
when
the commissioners show up, and God rest his soul, Rick Hummel would kind of subtly roll that out there just in jest.
That was his.
And he was entitled to ask that question. Anybody else who does it, I kind of have to wonder about it. Were they that bored? Really?
Claibs, there's not a lot going on down here. You gotta.
Hey, but that doesn't mean you have to try and reinvent the wheel.
Well,
I mean, it might be the most obvious thing in camp, other than the fact that the Cardinals are wearing red caps. Think about it. What else is more obvious than who's going to start? Who's scheduled to start, barring injury?
We got to, and that's part of it too. I think you got to wait and see how camp goes before jumping into even the things that we might be able to take.
Because he was the guy that was penciled to be that guy last year.
Ollie last year, I can recall, was very, yes, that when it was a conversation about going and getting this guy, that's that you get that guy for that game. You get that guy for game one of a postseason series, for game one of you talk about getting to an LCS or a World Series. Like, that's the guy that you want to ride. So, yeah, we'll see the way that it plays out in camp, but I think everybody understands for the Cardinals to have a good year like that, that's one of the things that you kind of put in your cap and say, Sonny Gray kind of setting the tone is something that they'll be very hopeful works out. Yeah.
Ghostface comments on Palante and McGreevy, saying that he thinks they'll be better than Lynn and Gibson were last year.
That's a really interesting conversation. And like the way I frame it is, remember what happened in 23. You didn't have enough pitching to get through. You lost 91 games. What does Mozeliak go out and do? He says, we're going to get 3 starters. We're going to get a little bit of a foundation for that rotation so the bottom doesn't fall out of it. And Sonny was kind of that front end guy they got. Lynn and Gibson were the guys that were going to stabilize that.
They were going to give you innings.
The bottom was not going to fall out of that rotation last year. And guess what, Claibs? It didn't. They won 83 games. They had more of a steady presence in that rotation. The way I would liken it this year when it comes to Palante and McGreevy, those guys can step in, and I would say they're younger players. They're less proven, and certainly Palante has a year under his belt now where we saw it last year.
As a starter, too.
McGreevy, we haven't seen very much at this level. What we have seen, we enjoyed, but we'll see what it looks like. I would say the floor is probably lower. Could the bottom drop out on a McGreevy because we haven't seen it, and does he hold up for a year, and what's that look like? Theoretically, that could happen. Is there upside, though? Is there a ceiling where we knew Lynn and Gibson what they were going to be? It's nothing on them, but they didn't have necessarily the ceiling that they did in their primes. These younger pitchers that are kind of coming into their own, you can make a case that the ceiling is higher, even if the floor potentially is lower for these guys.
Well, the floor is lower because there aren't proven players
Bingo.
like Lynn and
100%.
Gibson. But to their credit, I think they really help Palante be a better pitcher.
Yeah.
McGreevy obviously learned a few things because one of the great things about both of those pitchers, they were giving people. They would talk to young pitchers and just kind of help them along the way. And I think that's important. You know, we've thrown out some names. What about Steven Matz?
Yeah, he's a guy that
Matz looked pretty sharp today for his first outing. You know, you already have him on the contract.
Sure.
So again, another guy that, you know, you can just pull names out of the sky of players, and then you say, oh yeah, you're right, I forgot about him. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. So I've shared my McGreevy thing. This is a year of evaluation. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Well, let's see what he can do. Let's move him up in the rotation, and if he gets it handed to him, then maybe he learns from that. Compared to us trying to baby him and protect him. I know you don't want to hurt him, but listen, man, let's take the training wheels off. And if he falls down, and let's see how he gets himself up and gets back on the bike. But this whole, well, we don't want to mess with his psyche. Look, what is he, 24?
I think he's ready.
How many years has he been in the minor? Yeah, it's
so let's evaluate, and if he can do it, fine. If he can't, then he can learn from it and rebound. Remember, it's 162 games in the season, so there will be other opportunities.
And how many guys have we seen that have been, this is throughout all of baseball, have been called up, made a couple starts, went back down to AAA, and then found their way
Palante
back up
would
here
be a
again?
good start.
Yeah. I'm just talking about overall. I'm talking about overall baseball guys that are
Yeah.
top of the line starters now that got called up, got sent back down, and they made the adjustments and they came back.
I think the key is when that guy has a rough outing, that he can sit down with who pitching coach or manager, whomever. Okay, what did you see?
Mm-hmm.
What did you see and why you think things went south? Well, I didn't do this. Okay, good. So those are the first things you're going to work on.
Right.
And while you're working on those, here's something for your other back pocket, some things we saw that we think you need to work on. And here's the program on how this is going to come together. We're not just going to have you just take innings and just go out there and just do this and do this. We're going to go out there with a purpose. I want you to work on things. I want you to work on those things, whether it's side sessions or on the mound. You know, that's where you develop yourself.
Another comment from Trevor saying, I'm hopeful the offense can produce more this year so Helsley doesn't have to pitch in nearly every win in the first half of the season.
That was crazy last year, man.
Yeah. Ollie did talk today. I think the question was about pitching and bullpen, and Ollie just came out and said, no, we need to score more runs.
Yeah,
we need to score more runs.
Arenado said it on Monday too, whatever day he spoke with us, that he said the same thing. Like that was something they noticed from last year in runners in scoring position. Ollie talked at length this morning about that being an emphasis, and even something that Brant Brown has some thoughts on about how you maybe adjust the approach based on situation. And that's stuff that you would like to think is going on anyway, but that Brant Brown maybe brings something new to the table in that regard.
Have you had a chance to talk to Brant Brown yet?
We talked briefly yesterday. I talked to Nolan Gorman, and ironically, Brant Brown lived 10 minutes from him in Arizona. So they saw each other virtually every day.
I like that.
And you'll have a chance to hear Nolan Gorman later in the week on KMOX, and we talked at length about the things that he did in the offseason. But he just said that, Brant, just like the second day, things started to kind of kick in. And I'm anxious to see if he can stay disciplined, because when he has a level swing, the ball's going to jump off his bat. He doesn't need to put any more oomph to it. He doesn't need an uppercut swing. If he just levels off on pitches and doesn't chase, he could be a very interesting cog to this Cardinal machine.
He carries a lineup when he's going. I mean, there have been stretches in the years that we've seen him where for a week at a time, you're like, this guy is an absolute one-man wrecking crew. It's just about maintaining that consistency.
Yeah, and you know what? That comes with confidence. You get off on the right foot, and I think for the right foot, guys are still pumping fastballs early in the season.
Sure.
So then when they get the book on you, what's your book going to look like? Because, I know it's coming. I know they're going to start throwing me this. So what's my counter to it? I think last year when they started throwing him the stuff he couldn't handle up here, he didn't have a plan B. And then all of a sudden he started getting himself out more than they were getting him out. So this year, with a new voice and a person who probably sees something different, it'll be an interesting dynamic on how that thing unfolds.
We will have Claibs' chat with Michael Siani coming up in just about a minute from now. But make sure that you have signed up for the Sports Hub STL newsletter.
Better hurry up, because apparently the rest of the world's already signed up.
There's a lot of people signing up for that. You better get signed up for that before we launch our first one on Monday. You'll get all of the latest content from the Hub sent to your inbox twice a week, plus anytime sports news breaks. You'll be the first to know about Sports Hub STL events and new merchandise as well. And while you are on the site, take a look around at all of the St. Louis sports content, including recaps of daily programming, sports news, opinions, and more. And plus, if you like a little action on the games, Eric Sontag will have pregame betting analysis for every team that we cover on Sports Hub STL. Eric also hosts Domesticated Gamblers, which airs live here on our YouTube page on Fridays at noon. And of course, all of our programming available on demand as soon as we are finished with the live shows. It's all on the website at sportshubstl.com. Here is Claibs and Michael Siani.
Your second year with the Cardinals, and this year you come into camp with a lot more big league experience. Walk me through how last year worked for you, because it seemed like once you caught on, you really had a comfort level and really found a way to be even better from one day to the other.
Yeah, I think it was great to get the opportunity to play last year, and with this organization and with the people in here in this building was great. And I think we were on the same page from day one about what my role was going to be and how I could do whatever I could to help the team win. From the beginning of the season on, and obviously as the season went on, I got more and more chances to get out there, get some at bats, and feel a little bit better. Obviously, still a lot to work on, and still want to get better in a lot of different areas. But it was great for me. Great to have that experience last year.
Let's talk about the at bats, because everybody said the guy can catch everything, but obviously offense is something that you were looking at. You continue to improve from one at bat to the other, and you didn't get yourself out as much late. Was it just the fact of having more repetition and just being more comfortable and seeing big league pitches?
I think that helps. I think that's a part of it for sure. I also think that you have an approach and a plan, and that gets better and better as you get a little bit more comfortable. And I think the guys around me too, like you learn from a lot of guys that have been up in the big leagues for a long time and have done it for a long time and produced. So we have we had guys in that clubhouse last year that were like that. We have guys in the clubhouse this year, same thing. So you learn from those guys, you learn from your coaches, and you take one thing at a time, and you just try to slow yourself down as much as you can. I think that was important for me. Obviously, it was my first opening day roster that I was on. So everything's happening pretty quick.
What was that like, hopping out of that truck for the first time?
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it was a special moment for me, for my family as well. So it was a great experience, and like I said, you learn from it, you get better from it, and you start to incorporate little things that you take from those moments and those games.
For you going to different major league ballparks and every outfield is different, what's that prep like going to a ballpark you've never been into before? There's 3 decks instead of 2.
Right.
How do you try and make that adjustment from one park to the other?
Yeah, like you said, every park's different. So I think you just take a little bit of time to walk around. In the parks you haven't been, obviously you have your outfield coaches that you do some work with, and the warning tracks are different in a lot of different parks. The fences are all different, so you got to be aware as a center fielder, even as an outfielder in general. You got to be aware of kind of all the little different spots that each place has. So I think that comes in early work and batting practice and getting reads off the bat.
You shag balls in BP a lot.
Yeah. I think it's the best way to get better and make yourself a little bit more prepared for the game. I mean, those are as game reps as you're going to get before the game. So I think it's important to get out there and move around a little bit. You don't have to be chasing after every single ball that's hit, but
seeing it coming off.
Seeing it coming off the bat, making sure you're getting your breaks and putting yourself in a good position to go get it.
All right, so big league ballpark, you're there, you're waiting on the next pitch. How many moments did you have when the ball came off the bat and you were like, either you had to go back or you had to come in, or maybe you didn't pick it up, or maybe it was spinning the other way?
Yeah, there was.
And then the fact that you're playing next to Jordan Walker, so you got to make sure you get killed trying to run into him.
Yeah, there was probably a few. There are some ballparks where it's a little bit tougher to see than others for sure. So you got to adjust to that, and that's something that you gotta know coming in. But there were a couple balls hit over my head that off the bat you're like, oh boy, I don't know how this is gonna go. And then some of them make it over the fence, some of them you got to go get. So I definitely had a few of those moments, and I think the biggest one was honestly opening weekend in LA. I got put in the game late, playing right field, and Ohtani gets up to the plate, and I'm like, oh, geez, he's going to hit me a ball like 130 miles an hour right at my face. But he ended up hitting one. I came in and slid for it. But that was one of the, like, all right, like, I'm here, let's go, let's play, and go do your thing.
And that's the thing. You just said, I'm here. You're here for a reason. You're a big
100%.
league. And as long as you believe that instead of questioning yourself, this game can be a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, everybody's here for a reason. This game's hard. Everybody's good, and everybody goes about doing their thing, and it's important to take ownership of what you got going on every day, and trust yourself, trust your abilities. That was the biggest thing. I think last year, I was more proving it to myself that I belonged at this level, and was able to produce more so than proving it to anybody else, I think. So I want to continue to do that and continue to do my thing, play my game, and things are going to work out.
So do your thing this year.
Thanks, Mike.
Have fun.
There's Michael Siani with Mike Claiborne here on Cards Hub 365, supported by Gray Bar on Sports Hub STL. Claibs, give me your, I guess, what are some manageable expectations you have of Michael Siani this year?
You mean offensively?
Just overall, see, like,
man,
like if he plays 120 games this year, 130 games, Gold Glove. I mean, from what you saw last year in center field.
Well, I just think it comes down to the consistency of how many chances he gets to play in center field, because, some people think Lars Nootbaar is going to be your everyday guy. Victor Scott's going to have a say-so in this. It's going to be it's going to be a challenge to see how that shakes out for him, because, he could be a defensive substitution late. So his versatility is going to be important. But, man, I just think that he's a guy that just has to play in order to get the true fruits of what he can bear.
Yeah, and I feel like he's a guy that even if he doesn't start on a given day,
he's going to be in the game
he
somewhere.
Should play in 160 games, because guy could pinch run, guy could come in for late inning defensive replacement. But I like him in the lineup too, and I like him in that 9-hole where he almost served as that second leadoff guy. But you got to get on base to be considered that. And I think if his OPS starts with a 6, Claibs, it was 570 last year, and that was after a really slow start. If his OPS is even just about 610, that's a player that, with what he brings defensively, I like that guy in my lineup. I really do.
Here's the other thing that he does, and I meant to bring it up to him today. Best bunter on the team. And I know some people think bunting is a wussy thing, but here's the thing I always said. Anytime you have to make the other guy handle the ball more than he should, good things can happen to you.
And he's got speed to take advantage of the ball.
That's my point. He's going to make that third baseman rush that throw, or a pitcher who thinks he can come off the mound and make that throw. And the next thing you know, it's going in the right field corner. He's standing at third base.
And it changes the game.
Yes.
There are moments in games that completely flips a game on a dime, and it's nice to have a guy on your team that can do that, that can make that happen.
That's going to do it for our show today, boys. It's just the two of you tomorrow as I head back to the St. Louis weather, which I believe it's about 2 degrees right now.
I don't know. I don't
back
care.
there.
Sorry, guys, but it's kind of true.
I feel for you, but it's nothing I can do about it.
I can't help it.
So-
I can't help it either.
So yeah, that's where I'm heading back tomorrow.
Wow.
It'll be the two of you guys doing the show then, and then Friday I'll be back with Ryan Fagan making his debut on Sports Hub STL. So
We have a lot of guys on this roster.
we have a big roster. It's a 40-man roster. You could almost say
The Memphis shuttle is going to be used.
yeah.
Is that your point?
But it's more like the Columbia, the St. Charles shuttle.
There you go.
If you look at some of the roster members that we have
Yep.
on that list, and hey, you can come out and see most of that roster. Mark your calendars for the night of Thursday, February 27th for the Sports Hub STL kickoff party. The event takes place at the new Hot Shots on Lindbergh in Lime. Come out and meet the Sports Hub STL team. Enjoy great food and drink specials. The party will start at 6 as the Blues drop the puck on the road against Washington Capitals. And we'll watch the game together, have a great prize giveaways. And the Blues Hub postgame show will broadcast live on site immediately following the game. That's Thursday night, February 27th, starting at 6 p.m. at the new Hot Shots on Lindbergh in Lime. Hot Shots St. Louis is home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. And remember, tonight we are not done with content here today on Sports Hub STL. As soon as Mizzou's game is over with Alabama, and hopefully they win, you can get this guy.
I'm going to be locked in.
I believe Claibs. I'm going to, Mizzou alum right here.
You'll get an emotional.
He's got
you tell.
You'll get a reaction from me regardless of outcome. I'll try to keep it clean if we lose.
This has
but,
been fun. It's been fun to watch them play though this
Yes.
year.
Oh my goodness.
You think about where they were last season, and the one person who believed in Missouri was Dennis Gates, and it's a whole new team. And a quick story: we would spend some time together in the fall. Practice had already started. I said, "Well, how's it looking, man?" He said, "Well, we've had 4 fights already." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We didn't have that all last year."
Interesting.
And the fact that those guys were fighting early in practice, fighting for each other and fighting with each other, is how you see this team and how close knit they are. Now, I'm not advocating that in order to have a good team, you have to go out and have a fight.
Rough somebody up.
But I will say that once you get guys who take it that serious about somebody else, means that they care. And if you care, it's amazing what else you can get done. And we're seeing it with Missouri. And you've heard national pundits, for whatever that means these days, all talk about, this is a team you don't want to face in the tournament. So my concern is for them, don't peak too soon.
Because stay right there.
Just stay in the hunt, get your rotation set, because you never know what you're going to face in the tournament. And the way he uses his roster, they're going to be matchup problems for a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see Brenden tonight around 10 p.m. Central Time is when that game is estimated to end. But
because it's a late start, right?
Yeah, it's a late start.
8 o'clock Central tip-off.
But that's the beauty of what we do here on Sports Hub STL. We can go live whenever we want. No clocks to.
And it's available for you in case you want to watch it in the morning.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
100%.
It'll be there for you in the morning for you to check out as well before Brooke and Randy at 10 a.m. So for Brenden Schaeffer, who will be on with Kareem Rush later on tonight, and for Cardinal broadcaster Mike Claiborne, this has been Sports Hub STL's presentation of Cards Hub 365 right here on Sports Hub STL.